Hi guys, welcome back. I'm going to continue sharing what's going on with the death of Queen Elizabeth II, who passed away today at the age of 96, which has made Prince Charles is now King Charles, I do believe it's the third. So here we go.
years ago when Her Majesty paid that historic state visit to the Republic of Ireland. It had taken nearly 100 years for a British monarch to set foot in an independent Ireland, and she famously greeted guests at the state banquet in Dublin with the words, he paid that historic state visit to the Republic of Ireland. It had taken nearly 100 years for a British monarch to set foot in an independent Ireland, and she famously greeted guests at the state banquet in Dublin with the words, "A Cardia, my friends." And regardless of the divisions across this island, the history of this island, I think she will be remembered here by most people as a friend of the peace process.
Truly was a remarkable visit. I was just discussing that with Sir John Major as well. David, thank you so much. David Blevins, our senior Ireland correspondent. At Royal Hillsborough there, well, for most of her life, the Queen travelled the world and kept a busy diary, to say the least, of engagements. Now, it was only into her 90s that she started to slow down. Her visits had to be changed. As we all saw, she struggled more and more with walking and moving, and she missed more events like last weekend's Braemar Games near Balmoral that she always loved to attend. Well, Ashish Joshi reports now on the Queen's deteriorating health in recent months.
It was here at Westminster Abbey in October last year that the Queen's growing struggle with mobility first became obvious. Her daughter Anne handing her mother a walking stick, which she would now need for support. She was 95 years old, and the years were finally catching up. And this deteriorating health would mean missing key engagements. In November, she was forced to pull out of attending the annual Remembrance Sunday service at the Cenotaph. And this blow came soon after the Queen was forced to spend a night at the King Edward VII Hospital. It was her first overnight stay in hospital for 8 years. By now, the monarch had been warned she needed to slow down her busy diary commitments.
It's been very clear all the way through her reign that she wants to do her best, and she's taken an oath that she has put first. So she's done incredibly well. And yeah, worked an awful lot longer than most of the people in this world. So yeah, well done.
In her 96 years, she has rarely been ill. She had surgery on her knees in 2003 and was back in hospital in 2013 after a bout of gastroenteritis. Even COVID did not seem to have a major impact on her health. The Queen caught the virus in February 2022. She told medics and bereaved families about the effect it had had on her.
It does leave one very tired and exhausted, doesn't it?
But there were other things that troubled her that the Queen would never share in public. Allegations surrounding her son Andrew, and a deepening family rift involving Harry and Meghan, which would undoubtedly have caused her much stress. But there is one major trauma that would have impacted the Queen's health like no other: the loss of her husband, Prince Philip, in April last year. This heartbreaking image of a woman separated from her life partner. It can only hint at the all-consuming grief.
The Queen's gone through a really major life event, losing a life partner, and it's not uncommon that we hear stories that people who have undergone such a loss really find the following years really very difficult. And obviously grief has many effects, doesn't it, on our psychology, but also maybe on other
By June, however, the Queen was forced to limit her attendances at her own Jubilee celebrations. A month afterwards, she undertook what would be one of her last public engagements, the opening of a hospice in Windsor. The decline in the Queen's health was slow and not easily noticeable. Just a few days ago, she received the new Prime Minister. 48 hours later, announced her death.
What happens with somebody who is in their 90s or is frail is that even a small thing can make a big difference. Something that perhaps wouldn't have affected a younger person with much more reserve capacity can really make a big difference and cause someone to then become really very unwell.
A long, happy reign, a lifetime devoted to her family and her subjects. The Queen's 96 years were hardly troubled by ill health, and that will bring some small comfort to her grieving family. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
Well, good evening from Balmoral, where in the last hour or two people have been coming to lay flowers and to stand and to think about the monarch. For many of them, for the vast majority of them, of course, the only monarch they have known. But there are now quite a few flowers laying against the walls at the gates of Balmoral Castle, one of the Queen's favourite places to be. She always came here in the summer. She loved the peace of this place. She loved the countryside, and she just loved being here. And it is here tonight where her family have gathered. Her 4 children, 2 of her grandchildren are here, Prince Harry and Prince William. Harry got here pretty late, around, I think it was about 7:45 this evening he arrived, but the others got here early. But tonight they are mourning and they are grieving. James Matthews, our Scotland correspondent, is with me. It is a very special place for the Queen, isn't it?
It is. She's been coming here since she was a child at the Balmoral estate. And I suppose when the family, who we watched here arriving, grim-faced, a family in grief, I suppose they will be reflecting on the comfort that she herself, perhaps the public, saw her, which was on Tuesday, when she appointed a new inside the drawing room of Balmoral Castle, was in good spirits, was in jovial mood when her press secretary and press photographer were introduced. Were detaining, of course, Liz Truss above Aberdeen Airport. So she was in good form in a place where she felt comfortable, a place where she liked, where she had known family gatherings, family holidays throughout her time. It was a secluded place where she, a mother, a grandmother, away from the pressure of public duty.
Well, I'm afraid we seem to have lost communications with James Matthews and Mark Austin in Balmoral. We'll try and re-establish those links in a moment or two. But let me tell you more about the immediate time after the announcement that the Queen had died. Thousands of people gathered outside the gates of Buckingham Palace here behind me, and thousands of them are still here, and I suspect will be here for many hours to come. And in keeping with tradition, a written notice, a simple written notice announcing the death, was posted for them to see. A very short message to everyone who's lived under the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. Well, Katie Spencer reports now from Buckingham Palace on a nation in shock and mourning.
A swirl of rumours had seen small numbers of people gather outside the gates. Then just before 6:30, confirmation. Silently, respectfully, numbers grew, trying to capture as best they could this day in history. The enormity of this moment for some a struggle to take in.
To see the flag behind you sort of, slowly lower, and it was just a sense of you know, both realisation, but also I think this united love, and I think it was an odd kind of surreal feeling there. Yeah.
So it's a really emotional moment. Even if you're not born British, she represented the best values of the country that actually made me stay here.
I think there's been so many generations that have come through and just known her as this presence, even without being a political voice, just being this kind of stability and sort of more than just a figurehead. I think, you know, nation's grandmother is appropriate.
Outside of Windsor Castle, similar scenes. People wanting to mark this moment.
She's been part of my life forever. And, you know, she's not here. She's gone. And, you know, you hope, but you appreciate that, you know, her age, it was expected at some point, but even when it happens, it's still a shock.
I'm absolutely shocked. I couldn't believe it. And I actually didn't think I would be upset, but I am, and I have no idea why. It's just I think she's just so in everyone's psyche now, so I'm not even a royalist, but I'm still really upset.
Her legacy is so prominent. I mean, when I think of Britain, when I was growing up, it's always been the Queen, the royal family, and just like a beacon of stability.
As sunset, the sea of people building outside of Buckingham Palace. Umbrellas up, a little rain, not enough to put people off being here to mark this moment.
In amongst the crowds here, you get a very real sense of the shock and the loss many ordinary people who have been moved to come here are experiencing. And you find people here from all demographics and all generations.
Barriers brought in anticipation of the crowds to come. Many more expected here in the days ahead as the sun sets on the Elizabethan age. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Well, those were the scenes as you see in Katie Spencer's report outside Buckingham Palace in the daylight hours, and still like that right now. Thousands of people here paying their respects and sharing their memories with each other of Her Majesty the Queen. Our correspondent Dan Whitehead is in Cardiff tonight, and Dan, you can tell me about reaction in Wales.
Yeah, it is an evening of sombre reflection for the people of Wales as they remember Her Majesty and the strong connections, of course, which the Queen and the whole royal family hold with Wales. We have had a statement from Mark Drakeford, the First Minister of Wales. He has said that it is with great sadness that people of Wales mourn the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II throughout her long and exceptional life as our longest reigning monarch. Her Majesty has reigned over the United Kingdom and Commonwealth, firmly upholding the values and traditions of the British monarchy. The First Minister went on to say that we pay tribute to Her Majesty's dedication and selfless devotion. That is the statement from the First Minister on behalf of the people of Wales. Her Majesty last visited Wales back in October last year, where she gave a speech.
You know that she's 96 years old, and this had to happen eventually. But, you know, you're still shocked. And I haven't followed this particular royal family, like, other than the normal stuff. I've never done deep dives into their family. But, yeah, it's very sad. It's very sad.
He was invested at Carnarvon Castle in the north of Wales by his mother, the late Queen. That, of course, will be a focus in the coming days and weeks for the people of Wales. But it is clear tonight that there is deep devotion and admiration to Her Majesty, and it is an evening of reflection and remembrance at her loss.
Dan, thanks so much for that. Dan Whitehead live for us there in Cardiff. Well, there's no doubt about it. The world has changed. It's shifted immeasurably since Queen Elizabeth ascended to the throne 70 years ago, and even more since her birth 96 years ago. Now, before her passing, some of those who knew her best, including her family, of course, have spoken about what made her quite so unique. Our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills, looks back at the second Elizabethan era.
All those years of wisdom and compassion, we've been so lucky.
Her work ethic, her strong faith, her leadership, there wasn't anything Her Majesty couldn't do.
There was a courtesy and a humanity and a kindness that I'll remember forever.
Born in 1926, Princess Elizabeth wasn't expected to be queen. Her destiny changed with the death of her grandfather and the abdication of her uncle. Her father was now king, and Elizabeth his heir. Her role for life was set, and her approach to it shaped by the Second World War.
The sort of keep calm, carry on philosophy was absolutely embedded in her, I think.
The princess became a member of the ATS.
Wartime also sparked the most important relationship of her life. Her marriage to Prince Philip was celebrated across the country. Soon, Prince Charles was born, followed by Princess Anne.
They're taking the places of the king and queen who would have gone but for His Majesty's illness.
But duty called, her father was ill, and they had to take his place on a tour of the Commonwealth.
To the stunned heart of London and to the whole Commonwealth came the tragic news from Sandringham of the passing of a beloved sovereign, King George VI.
In a remote lodge in Kenya, Prince Philip told her the news. She was now queen. The following year came her coronation. Years later, she described how it felt.
In a way, I didn't have an apprenticeship. My father died much too young. It was all a very sudden kind of taking on and making the best job you can.
From the very start, she felt she had to get out and connect with the public.
The Queen and Duke now took their places.
Through thousands of engagements and inventing the walkabout.
Whether you were the lollipop lady or you know, you were a president or a prime minister of a nation, people become nervous. And it was wonderful to see how Her Majesty would put them at ease.
With constitutional responsibilities and weekly audiences with her prime ministers.
Virtually alone, of all the people that you knew anything that you said to us stayed within the room.
Do we think that this is a good idea? Do we not know what it's about?
She was a wonderful boss. We used to put up a red box every evening, and we knew that she would have been through them and it would be back on our desk the next morning at 8 o'clock.
The principle of listening to what she thought Churchill might have done in similar conditions or circumstances to what I found myself in. It was those sort of conversations that I learned a huge amount from and will treasure forever.
As head of the Commonwealth and queen of other realms, she travelled more than any other head of state, always conducting her own powerful form of soft diplomacy.
She can have a personal conversation which, you know, helps to move on some really quite difficult and tricky political moments.
Arwch Argus Acoida.
The first British monarch to visit the Republic of Ireland in 100 years. She was a figurehead of unity and stability.
She never wavered from duty or service. And in uncertain times, people need anchors. We've lost one of our most important anchors.
I'm very glad to have been able to join you today.
Often, she adapted the way that she worked, such as during the coronavirus pandemic, to reach out, set an example, and rally the nation with messages.
She really did do an amazing job. Her dad, from a very, very young age, if I remember correctly, had her helping with her red box, which was all of the important papers that had to be signed and gone through. So she would do whatever she had to do during the day, and every night that red box appears and she dealt with that business and prepared it for everybody else, and in the morning they would collect it and carry on until the next evening in the next red box.
What the children were up to, and I think there were moments when she loved the noise and running around the house. It kind of brought the house to life, and it kind of made the real family atmosphere.
Let me see if this is strong enough to... Get off.
While she was head of state, Philip was head of the family and a huge support.
Come around this side. They were a couple with a different relationship than many people have, but he learnt to live with that. It's difficult to be a monarch with the degree of responsibility that you have without a very good partnership to back you up.
In 2021, she said goodbye to her beloved husband and dedicated consort.
What you see is courage, but also a complete lack of self-pity. She feels grief, but
in a less deferential world, they did weather more difficult times, especially in the 1990s, as her children got divorced and a fire wrecked Windsor Castle.
It has turned out to be an annus horribilis.
In 1997, Princess Diana died in a car crash. It was a low point for the royal family, as the crowds criticised them for staying in Scotland.
The Queen's life has been a continual process of shaping how you keep in touch with a world that's changing very fast, but she was always doing that.
In recent years, the Queen led the monarchy through more turmoil. She rarely showed emotion in public. Privately, she was known for her genuine warmth and kindness.
You stick all these things in.
We were up shooting one day up in Balmoral, and the weather changed in the afternoon. So I took my raincoat, wrapped it round, I gave her my scarf and my gloves, and as I walked away, I cheekily took my flat shooting hat off and put it on top of her headscarf. 3 weeks later, she called me into her office, and she'd had this photograph developed and put in a beautiful frame for me, and she said, "I thought you'd like to keep this as a souvenir."
That's it. She was never happier than when she was with her dogs and watching her horses. And just sometimes we'd see a glimpse of her sense of humour.
I always keep one for emergencies.
So do I. I keep mine in here.
Oh.
For later.
As the Queen grew older, the whole country would come together to celebrate her milestone moments. She would go on to become Britain's longest reigning monarch.
Inevitably.
Can you imagine even thinking in the sense of having a job? 70 years. And I mean, she did everything. That's Jasmine. Of course, she always has to make an appearance, right? She was so dedicated, and she was fortunate enough to be with a man that was extremely supportive of what she had to do. And she many times said that he was the backbone.
Remarkable reign and the stability it brought, helping to secure the future of the monarchy as her family continued to grow. Throughout her life, honouring to the end the pledge she made at just 21.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family, to which we all belong.
Just some there of the remarkable life and times of Queen Elizabeth II, whose death has been announced today. And we're going to talk now about the succession. There is no gap in the British Constitution. King Charles III has now assumed his responsibilities. He's spending the evening in Balmoral, where his mother passed away earlier this afternoon, but will travel to London as King Charles tomorrow. Well, joining me now from Cambridge is the principal of Homerton College and Vice-Chancellor of the University of Cambridge, Lord Simon Woolley. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Lord Woolley. And mentioning that, I still keep wanting to say Prince Charles, King Charles. He has been, of course, preparing for this role all his life.
Yes, he has. But first, may I offer my deepest condolences to the royal family and a nation. As has been said, we are a nation in shock, a nation in mourning. And, you know, reflecting on Her Majesty's life, particularly when I look back on the documentary that she spoke in recently, she said that service is sacrifice. And when you think of the decades of service and sacrifice, right up until 2 days ago, you see what a wonderful global role model she's been. I mean, ever since this announcement, my phone's been alight with calls actually from around the world. I just received a call from Reverend Al Sharpton, Reverend Jesse Jackson, calls from Italy and Kenya, all offering their condolences to our great leader who has passed. And of course, as you said, passed on to our new king. I want to say Prince Charles, but it's King Charles III, who I'm sure, like many people, he will make a great leader and a great king who's been waiting for this moment to take his place in our history.
Lord Woolley, just as you mentioned, it would be really interesting for you to tell us a little bit about Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and so many others, about how Her Majesty formed those connections, why she would mean so much to them.
You know, it's interesting because both characters are deeply political, and yet they viewed our Queen beyond politics, the glue that's kept our nation together. And it doesn't surprise me one bit that I should receive calls from them offering the Black community, Black Britain, and the whole nation condolences from key figures such as those. And again, I think this will come around the world because she was revered, revered as a statesperson, revered as a model, Dermot, of integrity, of quiet leadership for him, for others, for me to aspire to. And, you know, as we mourn, as we are deeply, deeply saddened, we can be immensely proud, actually, of this incredible servant to.
So I will probably do this until, maybe another half hour or so, unless I get more people that are interested in watching it. I'll go longer then. But otherwise, yeah, about another half hour.
To our nation, who showed us what service should be about.
And let's talk about Charles, King Charles.
Yep.
That dignity and quiet leadership that you describe by his mother, from his mother, is that something in his own way that he will continue?
I think so. I think he'll do it in his own way. I mean, there's lots been said about the king, but I've been fortunate to work with him, to collaborate with him. And there's not many people I know on this planet who loves this nation more than King Charles. And his desire to bring people together, to confront issues like climate change and inequality is second to none. And I'm pretty sure that the nation, after mourning, will gather around the new king and saying that we're with you, that we support you in your new era, being the sensitive man and the lover of our nation that he is.
And Lord Woolley, I know you have roots in Barbados, and that was quite a remarkable visit that then Prince Charles made to Barbados, as it had voted to leave the Commonwealth and become a republic. And for him to visit, for him to witness, was quite something.
It really was something, and I was very privileged to join him during the celebrations. And what he did was set a tone across the Commonwealth, that we belong to the family, which is the Commonwealth. But he gave his blessing that we should find our own voice. I'm British, but I'm also Barbadian. And I thought it was true leadership, and it was humble, and it was heartfelt. And I remember being with him and the Prime Minister, Mia Motley. And when we was on a talk during the archives, she leant into me and she said to me, Simon, looking at the Prince, you have a good man. You have a good man there, and I'm proud to be his friend. And I think that wherever he went, were in those conversations, that you knew that this was a man who, like his mother, leaned into the service, the national service that is demanded from such a role, but did it in a way, Dermot, that you sensed his whole being, his whole sense of who he was, demanded that level of integrity.
I found another channel I'd like
For me,
to look at.
I've been privy enough. You see a picture at the back there.
Okay, maybe let's try this one. I think that this might be what we're after.
Celebrated milestones, and she endured the disgrace of her son Andrew's public scandals that saw the Queen strip him of his military affiliations, royal patronages, and the title of His Royal Highness. Her reign, which was born out of her uncle's abdication, saw her grandson Prince Harry also step away from royal life.
The decision that I have made for my wife and I to step back is not one I made lightly. It was so many months of talks after so many years of challenges. And I know I haven't always got it right, but as far as this goes, there really was no other option.
One biographer called her Elizabeth the Steadfast, her strength guiding her people through the COVID-19 outbreak.
We should take comfort that while we may have more still to endure, better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again.
Elizabeth's deep sense of duty above all, earning her a permanent place in the hearts of the British people. In 2021, she mourned her greatest loss, the rock of her own life, her husband, Prince Philip, her closest confidant and advisor. Their marriage was an enduring partnership, a sentiment she shared on their 50th wedding anniversary.
All too often, I fear Prince Philip has had to listen to me speaking. But he has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years.
73 years of marriage spent side by side, and at his funeral, the poignant images of the Queen, due to COVID protocols, seated alone. She will be remembered for a lifetime of unwavering service to her country. Perhaps Prince Charles put it best on the night of his mother's Diamond Jubilee.
As a nation, this is our opportunity to thank you and my father for always being there for us, for inspiring us with your selfless duty and service, and for making us proud to be British.
The Queen is dead. Long live the King.
And you had the honor to live there, cover her reign, and now come full circle.
Yeah, special.
ABC News Live's coverage of the death of Queen Elizabeth II will return in just a moment. Hope you'll stay with us.
It's just a sad day for us all today. And we've all known just one queen. She's the person we've always looked up to. Somehow. It's just a sad day. Just a very, very sad day.
With so much at stake in our world right now, we wanted to thank you for your trust and for making ABC News America's #1 news.
And thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues, The Hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
Admit it, these days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all...
Good to see you guys. Thanks for joining me.
Alone, they could only dream of volcanoes. Together, they can reach them.
Me fait remarquer que nous sommes fous de rester là. Et pourtant, nous restons.
In this fire, two lovers found a home.
Fire of Love, rated PG.
America's #1 news, ABC News. Most watched, most trusted, and streaming live to you anytime, anywhere, and free. This is ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news, free to you 24/7. Watch America's #1 news whenever you want it, wherever you are, anytime. ABC News Live, streaming live and free on all platforms.
Family to which we all belong.
Inevitably, a long life can pass by many milestones. My own is no exception.
Images from a remarkable royal life that came to a close quietly today. In Scotland, Queen Elizabeth II dying at the age of 96. And there are live pictures from Buckingham Palace now in London, the official residence.
I'm glad she was in Balmoral. Excuse me, I've been talking lots. That was her favorite place. Scotland was that was her retreat. That's where she rode her horses, went for long walks, and wasn't bothered. So I'm very happy that she was able to be where she wanted to be.
Of the monarch, people paying their respects there. I'm Terry Moran.
So glad you're joining us for our live coverage. I'm Kira Phillips, along here with Terry Moran, and you have been watching really since the moment it happened, 6:30 p.m. London time. We got the word that she had passed away peacefully in her castle with her son by her side, Prince Harry, Prince William. Well, of course, all the names changed now, all the titles now. It's King Charles III. You have William, the now heir apparent. He will become king once his father is no longer on the throne. So lots of changes within the family and leadership and how things now go forward.
And in the character of that country, what they make of their new monarch and of the monarchy itself. It's been in her hands for so long. One wonders if there will be a change there. Queen Elizabeth Buckingham Palace did confirm the death of Her Majesty at the age of 96. A statement from the royal family said she passed away peacefully up in Scotland at the family estate in Balmoral this afternoon. And that was a place of deep joy. That's where she took the family and where they could be a family, where word was she washed the dishes and Philip barbecued.
No.
And yes, that was because they had a little cottage. There's the castle, and then there's a cottage. And when they really wanted to get away from it all, they went over there with their family, trying to raise the kids and grandchildren in a way that felt like a family rather than a museum. Our team coverage of Queen Elizabeth's death continues now with ABC News contributors Omid Scobie and Imogen Lloyd-Webber.
Imogen, Omid, so glad to have you both with us. Imogen, you know, you and I have been talking, you've been talking with everybody on the network for hours now just about the life of Queen Elizabeth. I think of all the segments we have done over the years, Imogen and I were talking about every success, every celebration, every scandal. We were talking about it, and it's because the royal family really captivated the world, their lives. They are, whether it was, Imogen, you mentioned The Crown, going back to so many documentaries that have been done on the royal family. There was just something about this woman, this famous mom, grandmother, leader, 25-year-old young girl who became queen when she didn't even know that would ever happen in her life. Her coffin set to lie in state now, keeping with historic tradition, and the next 11 days, Imogen, no doubt, will be just astounding at what we will witness, what we will hear, what we will experience as we pay respects to the Queen.
Absolutely, there'll be an overpouring, an outpouring of gratitude. I often get asked, why are Americans interested in the royal family? And my answer is they're historically consequential, but they're also a family. And I think let us not forget this evening that there are a group of people who we know haven't always gotten along and have had their differences, but are together tonight mourning an absolutely extraordinary woman, a beloved mother, grandmother. This evening at Balmoral, we've got Prince William and Prince Harry. What's been going on has been very well documented, and Omid can talk more to that in a second. You've also got Prince Andrew there. All the children are there. And it's going to be a moment for them to be together, to talk, to come together, and also...
I'm just thinking as they're talking about Prince Andrew, oh my word, what she didn't have to put up with, like not only with the job of being queen, but sometimes her family did some interesting things as well that she basically had to, she had to deal with for them. Tried to
steel themselves for the next 12 days ahead, because obviously this is a personal loss, but it's going to be now played out on a public stage.
And it looks like we saw that photograph of, looked like Prince Harry arriving this evening in Scotland. He was the last of the family to arrive, the family gathering there to grieve their mother and grandmother, and a great, great woman. And Omid, the death of the Queen in Scotland is triggered these contingency plans. I guess it's called Operation Unicorn. A carefully planned, carefully choreographed transition and farewell. Queen Elizabeth was very much involved in it. Tell us what this means. What
Operation Unicorn is what they called it, and that was how everybody was able to know where to go.
Of course, the Queen has moved over to England, but of course one of those things will be laying at rest at one of the smallest palaces in Edinburgh, and that will be obviously followed by a procession that takes her to the royal train, where of course the Queen's body, resting, will be transported to England. Of course, the funeral will eventually take place at Westminster Abbey. That was the Queen's choice. We know it's very much the family abbey. So much good and, of course, sad has happened there over the years. But I think, as Imogen pointed out, you know, this evening especially is very much a time that the royal family have together to mourn in private before, of course, many of them are activated in different roles over the days ahead. I think there's something quite poignant about them gathering at Balmoral. You know, of course, we've all heard about those big summers that the family would come together, and we would hear about, as you said, the Queen washing the dishes and Prince Philip wearing the same cardigan for years that had holes in it that the Queen would repair. Every year they'd have barbecues together, and of course, as years have gone by, as the family members have had their own children and their children have had children, it's been harder to bring everyone together in the way that it's been. And I think this moment has brought together the family in one of the Queen's favourite places. And I think there's something quite special about that. You know, these things happen in mysterious ways. And I think, as Imogen pointed out, you know, also bringing together family members that haven't been together, perhaps because of fractures between the two families. Of course, William and Harry being side by side during this time will be a significant moment for them, considering there has been that distance that we heard Harry talk about in previous interviews. So I think this has all come together in a very sad way, but in a beautiful way as well. I think we have a family that are able to enjoy this special moment. Of course, before Prince Charles leaves, King Charles III, it's hard to remember that. But before he begins his role as king, you know, that's essentially started now, but there's much for him to do over the days ahead, and he'll sort of activate. Of course, at some point, there'll be a tour of the UK where he gets to meet his new people that he will serve in what will be a relatively short reign. But I think this is, I think for all of us, we've only known one queen, 70 years on the throne, and so what we're witnessing over the next 12 days ahead will be new for all of us. But of course the palace are doing their best to keep us in the loop. There of course have been many briefings about this moment over previous years, and that's been changed over time. Of course there are also preparations in place should this have happened during COVID as well, of course, to meet the various restrictions going on. And over the days ahead, the palace will play a central role in guiding us, the media, in the coverage that we do as well. There'll be briefings, there'll be aides that will be available to speak with. So it'll be a very interesting time, but one where, of course, we're seeing the birth of a new modern monarchy as we remember and celebrate the legacy created by the Queen.
Imogen, how do you think King Charles III will be accepted, embraced? Differences, similarities to how his mother took care of her country?
Of course, he has big shoes to fill, and he knows that. He's been preparing for this moment for 73 years. He's the best prepared heir to the throne in history. And his mother, of course, utterly beloved. Prince Charles, King Charles III now, over the years, has been often quite outspoken on many issues, on the environment, on the inner cities, very much more of an advocate. As monarch, he knows he can't do that, and he's already said he's not going to be able to do that. As a monarch, you reign but don't rule. The British have a constitutional monarchy. It may seem sort of antiquated, but it works for us. We saw it in motion just 2 days ago when the Queen appointed her 15th Prime Minister. But Charles has those huge, huge shoes to fill, and it's going to be difficult. I mean, obviously, the popularity for him and all the government in all the YouGov polls and so forth has never been as high as the Queen. The Queen, I think, on many levels, through her longevity, through her service, was always sky high, always had 80% plus approval ratings, anything that a politician would kill for. Prince Charles has always, it's been a little bit more problematic for him, and obviously all the Diana years and so forth. But a very poignant moment for the family tonight, and especially for William and Harry, being at Balmoral, which is, of course, where they were when they got the news about Princess Diana.
Thank you, Imogen. We also want to let you know we've got Mary Alice Parks, who is our White House correspondent. She's at the White House today. This close relationship between the United States. 14 presidents she met personally during her long reign. So what is our 46th president, Joe Biden's White House reaction to the day's events?
Yeah, Terry, President Biden put out a lengthy statement. I want to share with you some of the highlights. He said that in a world of constant change, she was a steadying presence, a source of comfort and pride for generations. He said that she was the first British monarch where people felt they had a personal and immediate connection with her. He said as a stateswoman, she had unmatched dignity and that she deepened the bedrock alliance between the United Kingdom and the United States. She helped make that special relationship special, like you said. You know, he went on in his statement to talk about times that he met her personally 3 times. First, when he was a senator, he traveled to the UK in '82. But then, remember, just over a year ago, June of last year, it was his first overseas trip as president, and he said that she charmed them with her wit, was moved by her kindness, and he ended his statement by saying that her legacy will loom large, not only in British history, but in the story of our world. So really a grand statement for a grand monarch, Terry.
And there'll be more of that to come, I'm sure, tributes from the United States, from the president and the delegation. Perhaps the president himself will attend the funeral. I would expect so, actually.
Imogen, Mary Alice, thank you so much. ABC News Live coverage of the death of Queen Elizabeth II will return in just a moment. Stay with us.
Hey there. Check the message request part of my... Okay, I'll take a look. How are you guys doing? I'm just shocked by this. I know I'm not supposed to be, but I am. Okay, wrong platform. Let's go over here and over here. I don't think I'm seeing anything. Let's see. Maybe send another one if you can, because I don't know. I'm not seeing it. Isn't this so sad? You know, it's heartbreaking. You know that, I mean, it was going to happen, and she lived a very long life. She went through a lot in her life. She did everything with grace. Amazing woman. And now we'll see what Charles can do. I shouldn't laugh. I mean, so yes, he's now Prince of Wales. Exactly. Everybody's titles are now going to change all the way down. Yeah. And then he's going to be King William, if that's what he chooses. I think it's kind of interesting that they kind of get to choose their name, their title. It's interesting to me. Some of them that go by John were not Johns, you know. Let's see if this
Despite all the pageantry and glitter, her grandchildren insist that behind...
Enjoy, you guys.
be just us, very small family, just doing little things like playing cards or whatever we do. And she likes just having her time to do that because it's the time when we all can just kind of hang around together, and it's quite nice.
She taught her granddaughters a British card game called Patience,
Which is the most difficult game ever, and I don't have very much patience. So when we play, it's quite funny because she'll sit there for a good hour and a half, and I'll sit opposite her, and she'll win a fair few times, and I'll just be like, we've grown up all our lives going to moral and scrounging in for Christmas, and it's the most incredibly special time for us because we have that time just with her and our family as just ourselves, not with the whole world watching. In Balmoral, where we go in the summer, there are the most incredible wild raspberries all over her estate. So when we were little, we used to go with her and pick the raspberries, and then we used to have the jam at tea.
Just as the Queen supported them, they tried to be there for her.
When the Royal Yacht Britannia was decommissioned in 1997, the happiness, she was incredibly happy travelling on Britannia, and it was a really emotional day for her to sort of be at the decommission ceremony. And I think it was one of the very few times that she's sort of cried in public.
Princesses and princes may live in a different world, but like anyone else, they take their life lessons from their grandparents.
She set an incredible example to me, to others to follow. Her leadership, her duty, her sacrifice, her selflessness, her love of country, I think they really, really shine through.
Her determination, her duty, but also her sense of fun and her love of life. I think that's some things that I'd really like to take with me going forward.
She's taught me to always be true to yourself and to stand up and be strong.
I am who I am. This is what I am. This is what my opinions are, and this is what I believe in. But I'm not going to tell you any more than that. To her duty and the way she's brought up, it's very, very important. She puts her own personal feelings and her own personal thoughts to one side and goes, what's for the greater good? What's for the country's good? And in some cases, what's for the world's good? And I think regardless of whether she was the Queen or not, I think everyone and anyone who's committed themselves to public life like this or has dedicated themselves to duty, I think they deserve a massive pat on the back and a recognition towards it. That example, if people took just a tiny bit of it away in their own lives, I think the world would be a better place.
And our thanks to Amy Robach for that piece. It's nice to hear from the grandkids
about their gammy.
Right, their gammy.
The gammy.
In the next, they're the ones carrying on the legacy and the memories and the experiences.
And they've got a great example. ABC News Live coverage of the death of Queen Elizabeth II will return in just a moment, so stay with us.
I can't really believe it, to be honest. I know she's getting older, but it's one of them things you never believe is going to happen. It's quite.
I think I'm doing okay. Let me, yeah, I think I'm doing okay. So far, so good. I'm on my third stream, and each time I try it, I'm just getting a little bit more comfortable. So, yeah, just like he said, oh goodness, just like he said, I mean, she was 96 years old, so you knew it was going to happen, and yet when it happens, you're shocked. I am. This is heartbreaking. It really is. This will impact so many things. There's going to be a lot of changes, not just with titles, but as far as even the government. This is going to be a pretty good shakeup. And I guess we will see if Charles can do it. He'll have lots of help, so should be okay.
Throughout her life appeared to be a sense of duty and self-discipline. She was born back in April of 1926 at her maternal grandfather's London home and named Elizabeth Alexandra Mary. The future queen was educated privately at home along with her younger sister, Margaret Rose. Even as a child, she was considered sensible and well-behaved. When her uncle had abdicated in 1936 to marry an American divorcee, that's when Elizabeth's father became the king, and she then was next in line for the throne. And what a reign it has been. With the outbreak of World War II, Elizabeth and Margaret, they were moved to Belmore Castle in Scotland, and then to Windsor Castle. In a 1940 radio speech to other evacuated children, the then 14 years old Elizabeth showed her pluck, saying, "We know, every one of us, that in the end, all will be well." And that certainly continues to ring out true here today. In a broadcast to the British Commonwealth on her 21st birthday, she pledged, "I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family, to which we all belong." Now, Elizabeth did wed Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark, whom she supposedly first fell in love with at the age of 13. Well, they got married on November 20th in 1947 at Westminster Abbey. Philip's athletic skills, his good skills and straight talk definitely lent a little distinct glamour to the royal family, as Elizabeth had beamed in his presence. They had a son and a daughter while she was still free of the obligations of serving as a monarch. Now, Elizabeth was on a trip with her husband to Kenya when she received word of her father's death, that happening on February 6th, 1952 at the age of 56. The cause of death was cancer. And on their immediate return to London, Elizabeth, well, she had then to be queen. And Philip moved into Buckingham Palace with her, which was to remain her residence for the rest of her life. So she was working up to the end of her life here. Now, following her coronation at Westminster Abbey on June 2nd, 1953, she became known for trying to modernize the monarchy and make more personal contact with her subjects, from garden parties to inviting 100 couples from around Britain who shared her wedding date to join the festivities at her 25th anniversary. Elizabeth's devotion to duty and a life service made her an important figurehead for the UK and the Commonwealth. The Queen saw public and voluntary service as one of the most important aspects of her role. She had links to over 600 charities, military associations, and public service organizations. Her patronages covered a wide range of issues, including opportunities for young people and the preservation of wildlife, among other items. Now, Elizabeth was known for her ability to keep her cool. In 1981, during the Trooping the Color ceremony to celebrate her birthday, 6 shots were fired from close range in her direction as she had rode down the mall on her horse. And Elizabeth was praised for her skill in bringing this startled horse under control. It was found out later that those were blanks that were fired, but a year later she awoke in her bedroom at the palace to find an intruder sitting at the end of her bed. She calmly picked up the phone to summon the police, then chatted with him until help then arrived. So throughout her entire tenure, the Queen was also noted for her good health. In recent months, the monarchs had put that in place here, as she had become the matter of public speculation when she was advised to cut back on cocktails for the sake of her health. And not long after, Elizabeth spent a single night in a hospital after being advised to rest. She returned to Windsor Castle following the day, and the palace said the same time. So on February 20th, 2022, the Queen had tested positive for COVID-19, and according to Buckingham Palace, she had experienced mild cold-like symptoms like many other people who had suffered from coronavirus. The diagnosis did prompt concern, get well wishes from all across Britain's political spectrum. The palace had noted that the Queen had been fully vaccinated and had a booster shot. So she had previously delivered 2 televised messages to the nation early in the pandemic in 2020 and sought to lead by example. She let it be known that she had been vaccinated and sat alone during the funeral of her husband of 72 years because of those coronavirus restrictions. So when she did die, Elizabeth was the most widely traveled British head of the state, the longest married British monarch. She had ruled for longer than any other monarch in British history, becoming a much loved and respected figure during her decades-long reign. She reached the milestone of 70 years on the throne on February 6, 2022, celebrating with the Platinum Jubilee in June to mark this occasion. Now, Elizabeth is survived by 4 children, 8 grandchildren, 12 great-grandchildren. Her eldest son, Charles, 73, now on the throne as king, and a nation going to be supporting him, especially during these very difficult times for the entire royal family. Let's go ahead, step away for a brief break. We'll bring you more on Queen Elizabeth's death, as well as other top stories across the country when we return here in just a moment. We are back here live on Live Now from Fox, where we are continuing to give you always the latest look at stories coming to us from across the country, and yes, even across the pond as well. Gatherers still here outside of Buckingham Palace as they mourn the loss of Queen Elizabeth II. Let's go ahead and get a little bit more detail on what we know is being left behind from the Queen herself. Let's go ahead and bring you the latest story with our Fox's Jonathan Hunt on Queen Elizabeth.
The passing of Queen Elizabeth not only brings the end of an era for the British monarchy, but will also impact the country's economy, as the mourning period comes with a substantial price tag. Out of respect for the Queen, stock markets, banks and shops across the UK closed the day of her death. And for the second time in less than 2 weeks, the market and many businesses will once again shut their doors for her funeral. The cost of these closures, coupled with funeral expenses and the coronation of King Charles, will be steep. The exact economic toll is not yet known, but according to Business Insider...
So it should be interesting. King Charles, that just blows me away. It blows me away. It just, I don't know. I hope he's well suited. Like I said, he's had lots and lots of training. He just is so very different from his mother. But at the same time, I mean, he's 70 years old and that's all he knows is that life. So, I mean, I hope it goes well for him. I honestly do.
That with Fox's Martha McCallum.
Queen Elizabeth II was born into the royal Windsor family on April 21, 1926. At birth, as the oldest daughter of the Duke and Duchess of York and niece to the King, no one expected that little Elizabeth Alexandra Mary would one day be the longest-serving and one of the most respected rulers of Great Britain. But a love story would transform her quiet country childhood into an altogether different destiny when Elizabeth's uncle, Prince Edward, abdicated as king to marry the American divorcee Wallis Simpson. Elizabeth's father reluctantly took the throne, becoming King George VI in 1936, making his oldest and then 10-year-old daughter, Elizabeth, his heir to the throne. At age 14, the homeschooled princess began to take on some royal duties. Her family was an outward expression of strength and resilience as England was battered by the Blitz in World War II. In 1945, at age 18, the young princess trained as a driver and mechanic in the Women's Auxiliary Service. She and her sister Margaret later joined those celebrating VE Day on the streets of London. Like thousands of others, she also had a sweetheart in the armed forces, her third cousin, Prince Philip of Greece. They were engaged to be married shortly after the princess's 21st birthday. The royal wedding held November of 1947 in London's Westminster Abbey. It brightened the gloom of those post-war years. The following year, the couple's first child, Charles, the Prince of Wales, was born. He was then followed by Princess Anne in 1950, Andrew in 1959, and Edward in 1963. But in 1952, while in Kenya with Prince Philip, Elizabeth learned the tragic news that her beloved father, the king, had died. In an instant, the 25-year-old became the Queen of England.
At my coronation, I shall dedicate myself anew to your service.
Elizabeth was to rule in a new era. Her coronation in all its splendor was the first to be broadcast on television, as millions around the globe watched the transformation as it happened. In 1957, Queen Elizabeth met President Eisenhower. She would go on to meet every U.S. president during her reign, except Lyndon Johnson. She often spoke of the strong and vital bond between America and the UK. But with the 1990s came turbulent times for the royal family as the marriages of 3 of the Queen's children fell apart, all under the scrutiny of relentless TV coverage and tabloid headlines. Then, in 1997, Diana, Princess of Wales and mother to the Princes William and Harry, was killed in a car crash in France as she was hounded by the paparazzi. At the time, the Queen was criticized for her reserved response and persuaded to make an unprecedented live broadcast.
So what I say to you now, as your Queen and as a grandmother, I say from my heart. First, I want to pay tribute to Diana myself. She was an exceptional and gifted human being.
Over time, the monarchy's reputation rebounded. In April of 2011, the Queen attended Prince William's wedding to Kate Middleton, as some 2 billion people around the world watched the ceremony. She also made a historic visit to the Republic of Ireland, the first British monarch to do so in almost a century, a step toward healing a long and painful divide. The following year, the country turned out in force to celebrate Queen Elizabeth's 60-year reign, a Diamond Jubilee celebration spanning 4 days. Thousands lined the banks of the Thames as a flotilla of 1,000 boats, led by the Queen, made its way down the river. The worst of British weather tried but failed to dampen the mood, and the then 86-year-old Queen and 90-year-old Prince Philip stood side by side for the 4-hour ceremony. Queen Elizabeth ended the celebrations by thanking the nation for honoring her.
I will continue to treasure and draw inspiration from the countless kindnesses shown to me in this country and throughout the Commonwealth. Thank you all.
In 2013, the Queen welcomed her 3rd great-grandchild, the much-anticipated Prince George, son of William and Kate. Now, all these years later, another George is now 2nd in line to the British throne. His younger sister, Princess Charlotte, is third. She was born in 2015, and later that year, Queen Elizabeth became Britain's longest reigning monarch, overtaking her great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria. In 2016, the Queen celebrated her 90th birthday. That was a 4-day event, honoring the Queen's deep involvement with the armed forces and giving the nation a chance to celebrate her life. 2018, the Queen watched on as grandson Prince Harry married the American actress Meghan Markle in a ceremony that brought glamour and Hollywood royalty to the House of Windsor and led them firmly into the 21st century. But about a year later, Harry and Meghan would famously decide to leave the royal family, move to America, and give a tell-all interview to Oprah Winfrey, which caused deep divisions within the family. In 2021, the Queen's beloved husband, Prince Philip, died at the age of 99. The nation mourned with the Queen, but COVID restrictions kept the funeral small. The image of the Queen sitting masked and alone in the church became the image of a country both in mourning and in lockdown. But as she had so many times before, the Queen persevered. From an early age, Queen Elizabeth was one of the most recognized royals and recognized women in the world. Nearly a third of the planet lived in the Commonwealth that she ruled. She managed to combine the truly regal with a countrywoman's simple pleasures, and she embodied old-fashioned values of virtue, faith, and self-restraint, honoring to the very end the pledge she had made when she was just 21.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
A great life that she has left behind. Live now from Fox, going to continue to keep our eyes.
Yeah, she could wear the most interesting colors, and like you said, never seen anyone rock some of these colors, and she certainly did. She was, yeah, she was just, in my mind, she was a great lady. She was able to stay steadfast, as you were saying, and she did her job. And from what I understand, she also was able to keep some form of normal in their lives. Yeah, an amazing woman.
All those years of wisdom and compassion, we've been so lucky.
Her work ethic, her strong faith, her leadership, there wasn't anything Her Majesty couldn't do.
There was a courtesy and a humanity and a kindness that I'll remember forever.
It was a life of public service and duty. Committed to her country.
My lords and members of the House of Commons, I pray that the blessing of Almighty God may rest upon your councils.
And her Commonwealth.
I feel enormously proud of what the Commonwealth has achieved, and all of it within my lifetime.
Devoted wife and mother. A constant figure of national pride as the world around her witnessed extraordinary change. Born in 1926, Princess Elizabeth wasn't expected to be Queen. Home videos show it was a happy childhood.
In those days, it involved rolling around the garden at great speed, catching the leaves as they fell off the trees. That kept us happy all day.
Her destiny changed with the death of her grandfather and the abdication of her uncle. Her father was now king, and Elizabeth his heir. Her role for life was set, and her approach to it shaped by the Second World War. Clear even in her first broadcast when she was evacuated to Windsor.
My sister, Margaret Rose, and I feel so much for you, as we know from experience what it means to be away from those we love most of all.
The keep calm, carry on philosophy was absolutely embedded in her, I think.
The princess became a member of the ATS.
She joined the Auxiliary Territorial Service as others went off to fight.
Lieutenant Mountbatten seems glad to be back at work again.
Wartime also sparked the most important relationship of her life. She kept in touch with Prince Philip by writing letters. And in 1947, they got engaged. A glamorous young couple, their wedding was celebrated across the country. Soon, Prince Charles was born, followed by Princess Anne.
They're taking the places of the King and Queen who would have gone but for His Majesty's illness.
But duty called, her father was ill, and they had to take his place on a tour of the Commonwealth.
To the stunned heart of London and to the whole Commonwealth came the tragic news from Sandringham of the passing of a beloved sovereign, King George VI.
In a remote lodge in Kenya, Prince Philip told her the news. She was now queen.
All accounts say that she gulped, gathered herself, a grieving daughter, but also now the queen, in a way that she could never have imagined, and of course in her early 20s at the time.
The following year came her coronation, broadcast for the first time on television.
She was very conscious of the fact that she needed to be out there, to be visible, going right back to televising the coronation.
Only 26, Queen Elizabeth still had to prove herself to courtiers, politicians, and the country. Years later, she described how it felt.
In a way, I didn't have an apprenticeship. My father died much too young. It was all a very sudden kind of taking on and making the best job you can.
From the very start, she felt she had to get out and connect with the public.
The Queen and Duke now took their places.
Through thousands of engagements and inventing the walkabout.
Whether you were the lollipop lady or you know, you were a president or a prime minister of a nation, people become nervous. And it was wonderful to see how Her Majesty would put them at ease.
Always calm, even when blanks were fired at Trooping the Colour. The Queen was constantly on duty, with constitutional responsibilities and weekly audiences with her prime ministers.
For someone who'd been a little boy in the streets of Durham waving a flag when she drove through in the 1960s, and suddenly there you were, you were prime minister, virtually alone of all the people that you knew anything that you said to her stayed within the room.
Always displaying her support for the military.
The principle of listening to what she thought Churchill might have done in similar conditions or circumstances to what I found myself in. It was those sort of conversations that I learned a huge amount from and will treasure forever.
Really nice comments, including one from President Biden.
Oh, that's very kind.
As every day, there were red boxes full of state papers to deal with.
Do we think that this is a good idea? Do we know what it's about?
She was a wonderful boss. We used to put up a red box every evening, and we knew that she would have been through them and it would be back on our desk the next morning at 8 o'clock. It was extraordinary how she did this day after day throughout her reign.
It wasn't just matters at home. As head of the Commonwealth, and queen of other realms. She travelled more than any other head of state.
I remember going to Uganda for the Commonwealth Heads of Government Conference, and from the airport to the hotel, I don't think I've ever seen crowds like it.
Always conducting her own powerful form of soft diplomacy.
I did get a sense how concerned she was sometimes about some of the conflicts, some of the challenges. She can have a personal conversation which, you know, helps to move on some really quite difficult and tricky political moments.
I think we haven't kept you waiting. Very nice to see you. Yeah.
They melt around her. And I've seen the strongest men just literally sort of become putty in their fingers. They are all in awe of her.
Uachtaráin agus a coisa.
The first British monarch to visit the Republic of Ireland in 100 years. She was a figurehead of unity and stability.
She never wavered from duty or service. And in uncertain times, people need anchors. We've lost one of our most important anchors.
I'm very glad to have been able to join you today.
There at times of national tragedy, including the coronavirus pandemic. Adapting the way she worked to reach out, set an example, and rally the nation with messages of resilience.
We should take comfort that while we may have more still to endure, better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again.
Her Majesty is the warrior queen. She has done it. She's been there. When Her Majesty dressed the nation. It's the empathy. We're all in this together, but it's going to be okay.
My grandfather broadcast the first of these Christmas messages.
Her Christmas broadcast every year was her.
It amazes me how much work she literally had to do on a daily basis and then try and keep some kind of normalcy for her family. She did it well.
Chance to send a personal message.
It's no surprise that families so often treasure their Christmas routines.
Because behind the formality was an utterly devoted wife and mother.
Prince Andrew, 5 last February, probably feels quite senior now that he has a baby brother.
The family is very close together, and we do enjoy spending time. And she's always made time all the way through her life. And yes, there have been those particular moments of the year when that very much comes first.
When we were very young, obviously, it was harder for her to have so much time. And we were obviously living elsewhere as well, so we were never really all together in the same place. But whenever we had the family moments and we met up, she'd be very keen on watching what the children were up to. And I think there were moments when she loved the noise and running around the house. It kind of brought the house to life, and it kind of made the real family atmosphere.
I think that'll be strong enough. We see this is strong enough to... Get off. Get off. I wanted to say.
While she was head of state, Philip was head of the family and a huge support.
Come around this side. Nasty feeling, isn't there? Another brown bed.
They were a couple with a different relationship than many people have. But he learnt to live with that. It's difficult to be a monarch with the degree of responsibility that you have without a very good partnership to back you up.
When there were tough moments, if he was around, it was hugely important. You could see them working a crowd or working a walkabout.
You watch it, they'll stop you.
It wasn't planned, it was instinct. They both had the same metabolic clock, I think.
In 2021, she said goodbye to her beloved husband and dedicated consort.
We have been inspired by his unwavering loyalty to our Queen.
What you see is courage, but also a complete lack of self-pity. She feels grief, but as she said on one occasion, it's not about me.
In a less deferential world, they did weather more difficult times, especially in the 1990s, as her children got divorced and a fire wrecked Windsor Castle.
In the words of one of my more sympathetic correspondents, it has turned out to be an annus horribilis.
In 1997, Princess Diana died in a car crash. It was a low point for the royal family, as the crowds criticised them for staying in Scotland.
Take care of the boys. Take care of the boys, Mum.
That's what we've been doing.
Sorry?
That's what we've been doing.
I know you did.
The Queen eventually decided to speak.
I admired and respected her for her energy and commitment to others, and especially for her devotion to her two boys.
The Queen's life has been a continual process of evaluation, re-evaluation, shaping how you keep in touch with a world that's changing very fast. But she was always doing that.
In recent years, the Queen led the monarchy through more turmoil, with the Sussexes leaving and Prince Andrew facing sex abuse allegations. She rarely showed emotion in public. Privately, she was known for her genuine warmth and kindness.
One of my predecessors said, you never come out of your morning session with the Queen feeling worse than when you went in.
She was always worried about you and how you were.
That must be quite difficult to do.
Yeah, and how your family were.
You stick all these things in.
We were up shooting one day up in Balmoral, and the weather changed in the afternoon. So I took my raincoat, wrapped it round, I gave him my scarf and my gloves, and as I walked away, I cheekily took my flat shooting hat off and put it on top of a headscarf. 3 weeks later, she called me into her office, and she'd had this photograph developed and put in a beautiful frame for me. And she said, I thought you'd like to keep this as a souvenir of that very funny afternoon we had up in the hills of Scotland.
One paw. That's it.
She was never happier than when she was with her dogs and watching her horses.
Oh, she does relax with racing poke. Yes, definitely.
Has won for Her Majesty the Queen.
When she gets to racing poke, you can see the shoulders drop. You can see her, somebody I know, somebody I've got something in common with. And she does maybe spend a little bit longer with them.
I do remember that suddenly there was a huge fight going on amongst a number of corgis. She waded in and she got bitten in the process, but she sorted it out.
Just sometimes we would see a glimpse of her sense of humour.
Careful what you wish for.
Oh, really? Please.
Boom.
As she shared the screen with some of Britain's other biggest stars. James Bond at the 2012 Olympics.
The two figures disappeared out of the helicopter.
Harry, in complete incredulity, just shouted out, "Go Granny."
And Paddington Bear for her Platinum Jubilee.
I always keep one for emergencies.
So do I. I keep mine in here.
Oh,
For later.
thank you for everything.
That's very kind.
As the Queen grew older, the whole country would come together to celebrate her milestone moments. She would go on to become Britain's longest reigning monarch.
Inevitably, a long life can pass by many milestones. My own is no exception.
And the first to mark a Platinum Jubilee. Her family increasingly expected to step in to support her. The Queen Queen's remarkable reign and the stability it brought helping to secure the future of the monarchy as her family continued to grow. Throughout her life, honouring to the end the pledge she made at just 21.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
So what a life, hey? All those gifts and so many tragedies. When you live a long life, like she said, lots of things happen. I'm 55, nowhere near her age, and I've gone through a lot. I cannot imagine what she has lived with, right? She's dealt with a lot with complete grace. I don't know. Maybe I don't have volume on this. Hold on here. I don't think I have volume on that one, guys. Right, Mexi Taxi? I agree. So I don't know why I'm not getting volume there, so I'm going to try something different. I have a lot of real life stuff I have to get to doing, but I am enjoying watching let's try this one.
China pattern with.
It's emerged that the Prince of Wales, the night before his wedding, really wasn't at all sure whether he was in love with Diana and was actually almost convinced that he wasn't.
On that day in July 1981, 750 million people all over the world tuned in.
So long as you both shall live.
I will.
It looked as though Cinderella had gotten her prince.
How are you enjoying married life?
Highly recommend.
What do you think, guys? Do you want to watch this one for a little while?
Indeed, bring us both an immense amount of happiness.
In this, their first interview, 1985 in Kensington Palace, music by William and Harry, and the royal couple still acting like newlyweds.
I suspect most husbands and wives find that they often have arguments.
But we don't.
No. But occasionally we do, because I mean, I go on longer sometimes.
Yes, but I'm faster.
There we are.
The thing that the British public will always be grateful for is the way she raised her sons, and the love and the affection and the touching and the caring that she imbued them with. They're never going to say whatever love is. They know what love is.
But as we all know, the fairy tale faded, and within 5 years it was clear the marriage had crumbled. Later, dueling interviews revealing that Camilla was still in the picture. Their foreign trips were now portraits of an unhappy relationship.
She was in touch with her feelings. If she was mad at her spouse, there were going to be indications of that in the photographs, and there were.
The funeral procession is on. The
south side of the park.
With Diana's sudden and tragic death just a year after their divorce, Charles was a single parent of 2 shattered boys.
They are coping extraordinarily well, but obviously Diana's loss and death has been an enormous loss as far as they're concerned.
As the years passed, Charles slowly introducing the other woman, Camilla, to the public.
Yes, it might have been an affair that rocked the monarchy, but it's endured and resulted in an incredibly happy marriage.
Through it all, Charles did hundreds of royal engagements every year, which increased the Queen in her 90s. By 2016, attending 530 engagements at home and abroad in just 1 year. Duchess Kate on dating Prince William and meeting her future father-in-law.
I was quite nervous about meeting William's father, but no, he's very, very welcoming and very friendly. So yeah, it couldn't have gone easier really for me.
We've got a new member of our weather team tonight.
Watch this visit to the BBC studios in Scotland, noting some weather over the Queen's favourite home, Balmoral.
The potential for a few flurries over Balmoral. Who the hell wrote this script? As the afternoon goes on.
As Charles now prepares to ascend the throne, what does he do with it? Will it be more striking to us when it's held by a man that we've seen grow up as opposed to Queen Elizabeth? What are the qualities that the British monarchy represents? That's the question that Charles is going to now have to answer.
This man is an absolute gem, and we should put our hands together in this country we've got him, because he is, to my mind, he is the next king, no doubt about it. And people saying, oh yeah, but he won't make a great king. Wait and see.
This grandfather, who has spent 7 decades waiting in the wings, finally will wear the crown.
Oh, it's not her own. And our thanks to David Muir for that look back.
And the look forward at King Charles III. ABC News Live coverage of Queen Elizabeth II will return in just a moment, so stay with us.
Sunk in yet. I am shocked. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I'm just gutted, absolutely gutted for the whole country. She just stood there for 70 years. She did a fantastic job. Everybody loved her, and now it's going to be different, very different. She's the only person I've known in my lifetime.
So much happening these days, it's hard to keep up.
Things change hour by hour, minute by minute.
I'll see what else is going on here. Let's see here. I'll try this one here and see if it's... Okay, let's see here.
I was on the side of the Thames, and it was just an amazing atmosphere. And then being in the Mall for the wave from the balcony during that Diamond Jubilee.
So we'll try this for a few minutes and see if we get any more information.
The Queen made to their local community and the effect that she had on their lives.
Lorna and Juliet, we're going to leave it there for the moment because we're joined from London now by the former Australian Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd. Kevin Rudd, good morning and thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you, and greetings on this sad day from London.
Kevin Rudd, what went through your mind when you heard the news?
I didn't really believe it because, I mean, obviously being in London, we'd been watching closely the Queen's meeting with Boris Johnson and the new Prime Minister Liz Truss on Tuesday. And then the reports about her again retreating from further work commitments. But so when we heard reports today that doctors were with her, I must admit my view, and Therese's as well, who's with me, was that she'll bounce back. She always does. Alas, this time, not to be the case. I think that's the view of so many Brits I've spoken to in the last several hours as well.
Her relationship with Brits, of course, but also with Australia has been strong and enduring. How do you reflect on that relationship?
Well, as Prime Minister, I had the opportunity to spend quite a bit of time with the Queen over the years. I remember visiting Windsor Castle not long after I was sworn in, actually. And then, after quite a long discussion with Her Majesty, then came back again literally a year later during the G20 summit here in London. So Commonwealth meetings, and after quite a number of these meetings, you do get a sense of the person. So what struck me most was just her overriding commitment to the institution of the Commonwealth. It was a constant theme in her conversation. What we could do to strengthen it, what we could do to improve it, what we could do about some of the more wayward democracies among its membership. So this was her passion and something which she lived for throughout her reign.
Much has been made as well, as you say, about the relationship she had with various leaders, her ability to get across the brief. We were talking to the former British Prime Minister John Major earlier, and he spoke with fondness about the meetings that he had with her. No note takers, of course, no one else in the room apart from a few corgis, and of course he's not going to reveal what was said there. But what do you think of the relationship she had with various leaders, various politicians?
Well, the first thing that struck you was how much across her state papers she was. I mean, I would have hated to have been a British cabinet minister or a British prime minister because she would have read that stuff absolutely thoroughly. But in meeting folks like myself, she was also extraordinarily well briefed. We had long conversations, for example, about climate change at a time when it was not, as it were, universally sort of on the agenda of mainstream politics in the media in the United Kingdom. But you've just mentioned corgis, and the other thing is that, you know, she's just a person with a great sense of fun and a sense of humour at the same time. I certainly remember being at Buckingham Palace when Therese asked where the corgis were, and then with a flash of the wrist, a button was pushed and this stampede of corgis arrived in the dining room and almost wrecked the place. And Therese pointed to one of the corgis and said, "This one looks unlike the others." To which Her Majesty looked down, looked back at Therese and said, "Yes, and her mother was a complete trollop." So she had a really good sense of humour, quite apart from being fully across the brief in terms of her responsibilities for the Commonwealth. And as we saw most recently at Balmoral, 2 days before her death, exercising her full constitutional responsibilities.
What's King Charles III going to be like, do you think?
Well, also as a consequence of spending a fair bit of time in and out of London during my own period in office, and also as Foreign Minister, I had a number of occasions to meet Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles, and now the Queen Consort. I think what Australians should know about Prince Charles, if they haven't worked this out already, is that he's quite a passionate environmentalist, and a passionate environmentalist well before it was ever fashionable to be one. So his sense of climate change responsibilities, his sense of the impact on other ecosystems and of our, you know, furry critters friends, this is something that comes naturally to him. He's probably our first role goal conservationist to be the British monarch.
In your statement that you put out earlier, you made mention of whether you're a royalist or a Republican in Australia, there is a sense of a very significant passing having taken place. Where do we go now? I don't want to get into a debate about, the future Australia may hold, but you made mention of that in your statement, and I'm assuming it's because you do feel there is a unity of people, whatever side they're on, that they do feel strongly about the Queen.
Much so, and I've said a lot to that effect in the British media, because here in the UK, the Brits' first question is, but you guys are Republicans, and how do you feel, therefore, about all this? Does this provide you with a great opportunity, etc., etc.? For which the bottom line response is, all of us saw the Queen with enormous affection and respect, Republicans or monarchists. When I first met the Queen, I told her the story of my mum, Catholic, working class, Irish extraction. You know, according to
I think I found a better one. I'll try it.
ABC News Live. So glad you're streaming with us as we cover Queen Elizabeth II and all the honors taking place across the globe right now. Live pictures outside Windsor Castle. We were talking about, we've seen people outside Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle. We've seen the live pictures from Balmoral Castle, yes, where she passed away, 6:30 p.m. London time. Can you tell? We've been on the air for quite a while. I'm getting a little tired
You're doing
here.
great.
Yes, but I won't speak Latin like the Queen did.
Yeah.
That I will not do. But it really is pretty tremendous just to see the outpouring of love. No surprise, and for the next 11 days, right?
Next 11 days.
I mean, you talk about honoring the life of somebody that has been on the throne for 7 years.
Choreographed
Yes.
by Her Majesty, by the late Queen, over the next 11 days. So we'll be seeing a lot of it. And I was just thinking, here we are in the United States. We're streaming live. There's coverage across this country, and probably in every one of the English-speaking nations around the world. There's a degree of coverage, and others as well. I mean, the impact of her on so many of the English-speaking countries. We identify with the people of, and with the country of Britain, where our forefathers, so many of our forefathers came from, not mine or yours, but so many of them did, and that this is a global event. And I think that's what we're experiencing right now.
And for more than half a century, Queen Elizabeth II, she has reigned over a rapidly changing country. We've covered the highs, the lows, right? The last few days of a vast empire. You know, we've talked about the scandals threatening the future of the monarchy. But through it all, she did rule with a steady hand and with dignity and a devotion to the British people. And that affection was quite mutual, a connection captured so many times. And that's why today, Great Britain is a nation that is truly in mourning. Take a look.
She was simply, to millions around the world, the Queen. The most famous woman of her time, from her coronation in 1953 to the outpouring of affection on her Diamond Jubilee, marking 60 years on the throne. So much history, so many indelible moments. Decade after decade, from the Cold War to the computer age, what an extraordinary reign. And for all those years, through all that history, duty is what defined this remarkable woman. She was born in 1926, a little princess, Lilibet her family called her, who was never expected to become queen until her uncle, the Playboy King Edward VIII, abdicated the throne to marry an American divorcee, and her father then became King George VI. The young Elizabeth was suddenly next in line for the throne.
I declare before you all that my whole life.
So what do you guys think? Do you want to watch this one? It looks like it might be a little bit more interesting, might get a little bit more coverage. Let me know if you want me to search for something else. I do not mind.
Whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family.
During World War II, the princess did her duty. She was a driver and mechanic on the home front, and she fell in love in those years, a handsome prince, swashbuckling Navy Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten.
Take thee, Philip.
To my wedded husband.
To my wedded husband.
They married in 1947. 5 years later, when King George died, Lilibet became Queen Elizabeth II. Her coronation was an international sensation. But the British Empire Elizabeth inherited was falling apart, all the colonies becoming independent nations. So she helped to create a new realm dubbed the British Commonwealth.
When we were young, it was very easy to take our grandmother for granted. You know, she was just a grandmother to us. I've actually really learned to sort of understand and accept the huge deal that she is around the world.
Elizabeth traveled the world, more than 250 overseas trips, showing how the British monarch could change with the times and shape them, even as she raised 4 children, the most famous working mum in the world.
She was a young woman in a man's world, carving her own way through life and through a job that she, like any of us, don't necessarily have all the preparations you'd like. I think she's done amazingly well.
Queen Elizabeth reigned through over a dozen American presidents and just as many British prime ministers. Her first was the formidable Winston Churchill, proving a savvy stateswoman and a constant leader on the world stage. The years brought their ups and downs. The wedding of Prince Charles and Diana seemed to be a highlight, and Elizabeth watched as her daughter-in-law captivated the world in the 1980s. But when that marriage collapsed so scandalously, many Britons began to doubt the relevancy of the monarchy itself. When Diana was killed in a car crash in Paris, Elizabeth stayed in Scotland with her family. As waves of grief rolled over Britain, the Queen was seen as unsympathetic, and public anger at the royal family reached a fever pitch. And then she returned and joined her people in mourning.
What I say to you now, as your Queen and as a grandmother, I say from my heart. First, I want to pay tribute to Diana myself. She was an exceptional and gifted human being.
As monarch, Elizabeth maintained tradition and yet moved just enough with the times.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, Your Majesty.
Who can forget her appearance alongside 007 Daniel Craig at the London Olympics? It was a rare moment of public fun from a woman who prized dignity, but her family knew a different side.
If you do ever have problems, you can share them with her and she will listen and she will try and help. But otherwise, she sort of lets you get on with your own life and carve your own path.
Perhaps one of Elizabeth's proudest moments, Prince William's marriage to Kate Middleton in 2011, a wedding that united the British people and breathed fresh life into the monarchy. 2 years later, the Queen would welcome the newest heir to the throne, Prince George, and later Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis.
She's a remarkably energetic and dedicated guiding force for her family. And I'm so glad that my children are having the chance to get to know the Queen.
In 2015, Elizabeth became the longest-serving monarch in British history, passing her great-grandmother, Queen Victoria. A long life, a long reign. The disgrace of her son Andrew's public scandals that saw the Queen strip him of his military affiliations, royal patronages, and the title of His Royal Highness. Her reign, which was born out of her uncle's abdication, saw her grandson.
So can you imagine having to deal with that? I mean, all of these guys, it reflects on the Queen. She handled everything with grace, but oh my God, Prince Andrew, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he's still in hiding.
Its wedding anniversary.
All too often, I fear Prince Philip has had to listen to me speaking. But he has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years.
73 years of marriage spent side by side, and at his funeral, the poignant images of the Queen, due to COVID protocols, seated alone. She will be remembered for a lifetime of unwavering service to her country. Perhaps Prince Charles put it best on the night of his mother's Diamond Jubilee.
As a nation, this is our opportunity to thank you and my father for always being there for us, for inspiring us with your selfless duty and service, and for making us proud to be British.
The Queen is dead. Long live the King.
And you had the honor to live there, cover her reign, and now come full circle.
Yeah, special.
ABC News Live, the death of Queen Elizabeth II will return in just a moment. You'll stay with us.
It's just a sad day for us all today. We've all known just one queen. She's the person we've always looked up to my home. It's just a sad day. Just a very, very sad day.
Okay, I'm going to try something else I may have found. Oh, was this the one I wasn't getting volume? What's this?
She travelled more than any other head of state, always conducting her own powerful form of soft diplomacy.
She can have a personal...
Let's try this for a minute.
Move on some really quite difficult and tricky political moments.
Uachtaráin agus a Coisa.
The first British monarch to visit the Republic of Ireland in 100 years. She was a figurehead of unity and stability.
She never wavered from duty or service. And in uncertain times, people need anchors. We've lost one of our most important anchors.
I'm very glad to have been able to join you today.
Often, she adapted the way that she worked, such as during the coronavirus pandemic, to reach out, set an example, and rally the nation with messages of resilience.
We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again.
Her Majesty is the warrior queen. She has done it. She's been there. When Her Majesty addressed the nation, it's the empathy. We're all in this together, but it's going to be okay.
Behind the formality was an utterly devoted wife and mother.
The family is very close together, and we do enjoy spending time. And she's always made time all the way through her life. And yes, there have been those particular moments of the year when that very much comes first.
Whenever we had the family moments and we met up, she'd be very keen on watching what the children were up to. And I think there were moments when she loved the noise and running around the house. It kind of brought the house to life, and it kind of made the real family atmosphere.
We see this is strong enough to... Get off.
While she was head of state, Philip was head of the family and a huge support.
They were a couple with a different relationship than many people have. But he learnt to live with that. It's difficult to be a monarch with the degree of responsibility that you have without a very...
Hey guys, I think I'm going to jump off for a little while. I'll keep watching, see if anything comes up that maybe I think you would be interested to see. So thank you guys very much for hanging out with me. You have no idea how much I appreciated it. And yeah, like I said, I can't thank you enough. So I'm going to jump off. I'll keep my eyes and ears peeled, and I'll absolutely see you in the next one. Cheers, friends.